So, antique doll collecting. That title is not a joke, I'm being dead serious. I've been doll collecting for about a year now, and I have a total of 40 figurines and dolls. And I'm still shopping for more. I'm actually looking for more storage so I can put more dolls in my room. So it's an ongoing collection. When I was a kid, I actually used to be terrified of dolls. My grandma, for example, had a doll in one of her back rooms of the house, and I remember being terrified of that thing. It sat on top of the cabinet, high above, overviewing everything. And because this room was tucked away, we hardly ever even went into it. And when we did, the first thing you would see is that terrifying doll in the shadows of the room, staring at you from above. I was horrified by that doll. I was terrified, and I would cry to my grandma about how creepy it was and how I hated it. And now I own the doll. R.I.P. Grandma. But even me from a year ago would be weirded out by my doll collection fascination. So, you might be asking, how did I get into doll collecting if I used to be so terrified of dolls and horror things in general? The answer? I don't know. It sounds like a lame answer, but I genuinely don't know. One day, I was going thrifting with my mom. I stumbled upon this thrift store that was owned by this nice little lady who wasn't connected to any mainstream brands. She quite literally rented out this small little house on the side of the road and filled it with a bunch of trinkets that she found or that people gave her or donated. While I was in there one day, I found this really, really pretty doll, and I just fell in love with her. She was my first ever doll in my collection. For irony's sake, I named her Rosemary. Rosemary is actually homemade, and you can tell by the way that she's structured. Her eyes and such. She was knitted by someone, and I remember when I looked at it, that's all I could think about. That someone owned this and put so much time into creating her. I couldn't be scared of that when she was a work of art, and so I took her home. After I had Rosemary, I started to collect a lot more thrifting stuff. And while I was thrifting, I noticed more and more dolls. I couldn't help but get a hunch of wanting to get more, despite the fact of being very scared of them. Eventually, I got 2 more. I call them the twins. Valentine and Alyssa. And from there, my obsession kinda skyrocketed. It kinda became an addiction to keep collecting more and more. And while I was collecting more and more dolls over time with my thrifting, which I didn't get to do very often, I was running out of space on my TV stand. I was getting to the point of my collecting journey where I was wondering, hey, maybe I should stop because I'm running out of room. And at that point, if you run out of room, you should probably call the collection completed. However, I didn't want to do that. I started telling people around me that I actually was collecting antique dolls. I was very proud of them, and I was proud that I was conquering my fear. My mom even gave me some of her older ones, and I put them with my collection, and I love them very, very much. But when my grandparents heard of this, they decided to bring me a whole entire storage wardrobe just for these collections. You can also use it for clothes, but look how perfect it is! Perfect for dolls. Once that was installed in my room, there was no going back. I had so much room to fill up, so much to do, and so I started collecting like a mad woman. I even started to get furniture for when I ran out of room in my collection, I could continue to fill it. I never thought I was going to reach the point where I ran out of room, but currently, I have reached the point of my wardrobe where I have no more room for any more dolls. Now, a lot of people are probably watching this video and wondering, hey, Rosa, you collect so many dolls, right? So, are any of them haunted? Yeah. I'm not gonna lie to you, they are. They are definitely haunted. 2 of them, at least. And that is Rosemary and Valentine. How do I know this? Well, Rosemary specifically is the most active, and I know for sure that she is definitely haunted. Nowadays, she's a lot more calmer, but this was the beginning of when I first got her. Rosemary had a habit of making a lot of ruckus in the night. She would knock things over on her little cupboard that she sat on, or she would appear on my bed in my arms when I woke up. I had never put her in my arms before going to bed, as she was too small and I was scared she was going to get crushed. But she would somehow appear in my arms. Granted, I could have been sleepwalking those whole entire times, but I've never slept walked before her, so that wouldn't have really made a lot of sense. Rosemary isn't malicious by any means, and I'm not saying that all haunted creatures aren't. I do want to make this known. A lot of haunted creatures out there are dangerous and should not be messed with, but there are some that don't mean any harm. You can usually tell the difference by just how they act towards you. Rosemary has not shown me any hostile intentions. Only to men. And I'll get into that in a sec. She has never once made me feel like I was in danger of myself. She just seems curious. I can tell that Rosemary is a younger soul, and though I'm not super adept with ghosts, I don't have like a connection and I don't fuck with Ouija boards. No one should, because they're fake, guys. Don't do that. I do understand that a lot of ghosts are just lost souls that are struggling, and so I don't hold any resentment toward them. The worst that Rosemary has ever done is try to take out one of my guy friends. And I say that very lightly, because it was just a small, thin book. The Art of War, to be specific. I'll provide a picture. One day, my friend was over and we were eating Whataburger. We were talking and chatting, and I was trying to get my PC set up. For some odd reason, I think it was with my drawing tablet, I just couldn't figure it out, and I was getting really frustrated, and he was just there eating. He was minding his business when he had to go to the bathroom, and my bathroom is right behind my cabinet. I basically had to go past my cabinet. As he was doing that, and he's not that much shorter than the cabinet, it's around his height, the Art of War book that was right next to Rosemary and propped up carefully fell off. It didn't hit him in the head, but it almost did, and we both kind of stopped for a second and stared. And when we looked up at Rosemary, she was glanced towards him, staring at him. We didn't really say anything more than that. I laughed it off by saying that she wasn't actually gonna hurt him, but he was pretty unsettled, to say the least, and I don't blame him. From what I know about Rosemary, and the reason why I'm able to know a little bit about how she works, is because she has visited me in dreams, or at least giving me vibes. I can tell she's a younger spirit, mainly because she does tend to throw fits. When she used to stay in the cabinet, I have since moved her because I could tell she didn't like it. She would bang on the cabinet whenever I wasn't giving her enough attention, or when I was talking with a guy friend. She really doesn't like men, at all. I'm not sure how she died. I know that she's younger, but I also know that it most likely had to do with something with a man, because why else would she hate them so much? From all my experiences of having girlfriends over, she does not care about them. She doesn't even bat an eye, or I guess, a button. She just kind of lets them live and minds her own business. As for Valentine's a lot less active for Rosemary, and for a while I thought what was happening was Rosemary. But then I realized that it most likely is Valentine. There could be another doll that is haunted, and it's not Valentine, but she's the main suspect right now. For a while, I kept Rosemary out of the box because she was getting really disgruntled, and I have one guy doll, and it kept ending up on its back, or just very abused. It's not injured or anything, but you can tell that his limbs get all pushed out of the way, and I didn't want that to happen. So in order to keep that from going on, I kept Rosemary out of the cabinet as she is now, to cool off basically. And, that should have resulted in no more noises from the cabinet. And it's not a creaky cabinet by any means, it's actually very well built. But I would wake up in the night to banging on the cabinet. Soft banging, not as loud as Rosemary used to do. Just very gentle tapping. And when I would look over, it would always be in one drawer, specifically, never in the others. I think Valentine is active too, but she hasn't really expressed herself as much. I also don't get negative vibes from her as well. She just kind of chills. As for those two, out of my 40 different vintage dolls, they're the only ones that really show activity, and they're not as cool as people think. They just kind of mind their business and do their own thing. They don't walk around my room like they own the place. They stay in their places and only really get active when they're mad or in my dreams. But again, dreams could also just be biased. So besides that, they only move a little bit. Sorry to burst your bubble. Haunted dolls are actually not that interesting. The funny thing about owning vintage dolls, though, even if they weren't haunted, is how terrified people are of them. I mean, the actual phobia isn't funny, but the way people usually respond about it, kinda is. My good friend Mill, otherwise known as Mill_Leon, or Mill_Champ, as they used to be known, is terrified of dolls. It's a huge fear of Mill's, like a really bad fear. And when we became friends, that was one thing I had to inform them of before they came over for the first time. I have dolls. They were not stoked, to say the least, especially when I accidentally let it slip that yes, one of them is haunted. When they came over, I had to put a blanket over the cabinet so that they couldn't see the dolls, but that didn't really work because some of the dolls are on top of my cabinet, so they still had to see them anyways. At least it kept a little bit out, and I kept Rosemary hidden as well, and Rosemary behaved herself so she didn't scare the shit out of Mill. My other friends online are also terrified of my dolls, but I've also kind of gotten them to love them. My friend Dish also used to be very scared of dolls. But when I started to describe Rosemary and how she's more like a cat, who, if she doesn't want to be picked up anymore, will grow heavy in your arms, just kind of got charmed by her, as did the others, who knew that comparing haunted dolls to animals is really the way to get people to get over their fears. Even my own IRL sister is terrified of the dolls. One day when she was in my room next to the cabinet, she was walking around and talking to me about something when she accidentally slammed against it. Because of this, Rosemary fell off the top of the cabinet and onto the floor. We both kind of went silent as she didn't really know which one was the one that was haunted, and when I told her of such, she flipped out. She ran out of my room in utter fear and told my mom that my doll was gonna come and hurt her. She tried to play it off that she was kidding and upping her fear, but it was very clear she wasn't. In order to comfort her, I had to tell her while holding Rosemary that Rosemary wasn't going to harm her, and most likely wouldn't be able to get to her room in the first place because of how she was built. She can't really move a lot, and that's why she can only really knock things over because she doesn't really have legs. So she wouldn't have been able to walk to my sister's room in the first place. Rosemary can't really fly. The only reason why I think she was able to get on my bed so long is because the way my dresser is set up is that she could easily jump down from my bed and then roll into my arms. Now that I've moved her, even though she's out of the cabinet and can come to me, she can't get to me because the cabinet's too far away from my bed. So I had to tell my sister that though it's kind of terrifying and she's most likely mad at her, she's good as long as she stays in her room. My sister didn't visit my room for a while after that. I couldn't tell if that was a blessing in disguise or not. Love you, Brooke. I do genuinely love owning vintage dolls, and if you're thinking about getting into vintage collecting, whether it be dolls or other things, I highly suggest it. It's an expensive hobby, but it's so worth it, especially when you get to take a step back and look at all the things that you collected over the years. It's a lot of hard work, but that hard work definitely pays off. If you want to get into vintage collecting, I suggest looking around for not only thrift stores, but also antique malls. There you'll find a lot more than just kind of donated dolls that they bought from like Walmart or something. That's where you find the actual antique and vintage material and memorabilia. Vintage collecting is a very fun hobby. Just make sure that you have enough storage and you know what you're doing and looking for. Don't get scammed. Sometimes these places will overcharge things when really they shouldn't, and that you could easily buy them on eBay. So just keep that in mind when you're vintage shopping. Don't get scammed, ladies and gentlemen, and anything in between. Be careful when shopping. Thank you for watching! This is my first time trying this form of content. I've always wanted to do little storytime videos, and I think talking about my vintage dolls is also really fun. It's something I really enjoy, and I think a lot of people would be able to enjoy as well, especially the stories of my friends being scared. Let me know what you guys think about these types of videos. I have a lot of ideas to talk about. If you like these little SpeedPaint story times, I'll be sure to do more of them. I had a blast filming this and recording it and editing it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Have a fabulous day.